So back in the late 70s, BMW designated the 6 Series to be the official Grand Tour of the company, and things got started with the E24 6 Series. Now that car was amazing. It had this aggressive shark nose grille at the front, and it tapered really nicely with the rest of the sleek design of the car. Anyways, production ended in the late 80s, and while some said afterwards that the successor to the 6 Series was the 8 Series, many disagreed. But after a 14-year hiatus, BMW revived the 6 Series in 2003 with the launch of the 645ci, and they designated it as the E63 chassis. Now, upon launch, BMW hadn't got the warm welcome from enthusiasts that they hoped they would get, and that was simply because this car was so different from the beautiful conservative design language that BMWs had prior to it. But nevertheless, this car made huge headlines, and that was simply because there was nothing on the road like it back in 2003. So after spending some time with this car, I have to say it meets all the specifications of a Grand Tour. It's comfortable, it's got plenty of power, it can handle well, and it can cross great distances with ease. But it also has a few drawbacks, mainly this controversial back end designed by Chris Bangle. Look, I honestly think beauty is a subjective matter, and whether you like the Bangle butt or not, I'll leave that up to you. However, when this car came out, it was really pioneering in terms of design, and it made a lot of advancements for BMW later on. Okay, so now that we've got the Bangle butt out of the way, let's continue. So I mentioned it's a great GT car, and we've gone over the controversial design. What else could possibly be wrong with this car? Are there any flaws? Well, there is a big flaw, and that's reliability. These cars cost over $1,000 on average to maintain per year. So let's see a few examples of some generic problems with the E63 and E64 6 Series BMWs. Is there blue smoke coming from the back of the car? Well, that has to do with the valve stem seals, and since there's 32 of them, replacing them costs anywhere from $4,000 to $9,000. However, if you want to do it yourself, you can get a kit that helps you do it for roughly $1,000. Are there warnings on the iDrive system about dynamic control issues? Well, this could be as simple as needing more power steering fluid, to replacing a valve block, or even worse, the active anti-sway bars. This can be a little bit scary, as repairs can cost upwards of $1,200. What about the convertible top? Well, you might start the car and you might get an error message saying that it's not closed and secured, even though it looks like it is. And that could be due to either two things. It could be due to a faulty position sensor or faulty brackets. And unfortunately, these cost a lot to fix. In fact, BMW got sued by this, and it's expected that owners will receive some sort of settlement. What if there's a big puddle under your car? Well, this most likely has to do with cooling issues. Components such as thermostats, hoses, and water pumps tend to fail in BMWs of this era, especially with V8s, as they tend to produce more heat. Gaskets are also an issue, especially in the transmission and the engine, and they can cost on an average of $1,200 to replace one. And finally, the worst issue of them all is the electronics and sensors. Now, this car is complicated in that respect, and therefore it is expensive to fix. But these problems are a little bit more prominent in the 645ci. One thing I would advise is never ever open the convertible top while the car isn't running. It drains a lot of battery, and that can in turn cause the car's 15 or so computers to spew out all types of warnings. Alright, so now that I've got that out of the way, let's focus on what this car or any BMW does best: the driving experience. So a few things to note. Firstly, this car does 0 to 60 in about 5.5 seconds. I'll get to power figures later, but for now, it's worth noting that all power is sent to the rear wheels, as there was no X-Drive available for the 6 Series of this generation. As for transmissions, you can choose between a 6-speed auto from ZF or a 6-speed manual. There was also an SMG gearbox available on the earlier 645ci models. If you're looking for a more enjoyable and simple ride, go for the manual. Now, it's also worth noting that this car weighs a whopping 4,800 pounds and is about 16 feet long. That's like an SUV, but it definitely doesn't feel like it. BMW has done an impressive job masking its overall size and weight, and it feels as if it drives half its size. So in terms of handling, it's no nimble sports car, but it definitely handles well for how big it is. Remember, this is a Grand Tour, not a nimble, fast car. Overall, you can definitely feel the road through this wonderful 3-spoke steering wheel. It's definitely involving, but if you do plan on pushing the car through the corners, you're simply going to get understeer, and that's due to its weight. As for the suspension, it's a nice blend of sportiness but comfort at the same time. It's not too stiff, but at the same time it's not too soft. Now for power, there's no lack of it. Under the hood we've got a 4.8 liter V8 engine that's good for 360 horsepower and 360 foot-pounds of torque. Now peak horsepower comes on at about 6,400 RPM, but where this engine shines is how low it delivers that torque. Peak torque comes on at about 3,400 RPM, so you've got definitely a lot of low-end power to accelerate and get by. Now, the best part about this engine, in my opinion, is the exhaust note. It's definitely got a nice low-end rumble to it. Now keep in mind, it is a little bit quiet, and that's simply because of the nature of this car. It's meant to be a comfortable, relaxing GT. However, I've seen modifications to these N62 V8 BMW engines, and something simple as a muffler or resonator delete makes these engines sound absolutely ferocious. Now, as I said before, this car is about comfort and smoothness, and that goes with the engine. Power is simply delivered in a very smooth manner, and if you do plan on pushing it, you're going to find that it's a little bit lazy and dull. However, if you do put it into sport mode, it does tighten the throttle and the suspension. As for the pedals, the gas is nice and linear, and the brakes do their job. You've got 6 piston calipers in the front and 4 in the rear. As for the manual shifter, I've heard bad criticism about it, and I completely disagree. Sure, the throws might be a bit longer, but they're definitely shorter compared to other BMWs. And when you're using it, it definitely offers a lot of good feedback. It's super smooth, and you always know what gear you're in. If you do plan on driving one of these 6 Series in a back road or on a canyon, definitely get it with a manual transmission, as it's so much more involving compared to the automatic that was offered on the E63 and E64 series at the time. All in all, I think where this car excels at is cruising down boulevards or highways, or driving down long curving roads. This car is just so planted and stable and comfortable. It's not meant to go on back roads, but if you really want to, it does have the potential to do so. Overall, I mean, it has such an amazing on-road presence, and wherever you go, people will always be looking at you, especially if you have the top down. What about the interior? Well, for the most part, the overall build quality is good. You get leather, metals, and high-quality plastics. As for the seats, the front 2 seats offer great comfort with abundant legroom, great positioning, and soft leather. The back seats, on the other hand, are the complete opposite. There is literally no legroom for anyone that's over 6 foot tall. Another feature that this car offers is first generation iDrive. You've probably heard many people complain how bad it is, but here's what I have to say. I will admit it's a bit complicated, but if you spend 10 minutes or so to learn it, it will be just like using any other interface. And in the end, if you're still reluctant to learn it, just use your smartphone. So there you go. That is the E64 650i BMW convertible. And after spending the day with it, I can officially say this is definitely a worthy GT. Now, would I daily drive this? Probably not, because in the end it is a convertible. But if you are looking to daily drive the 6 Series, I would recommend getting the coupe, as it is a little bit more robust. So if you are looking at getting a used E63 or E64 6 Series, make sure you get a warranty or set money aside for repairs, as these are premium cars and they require premium service. Other than that, this car is one of the best forms of automotive therapy, especially when it's a sunny day like this and you have the top down. And I assure you, whenever you park this car and you look back, it will always leave a great impression. Thanks for watching.